about with regard to Google Hangout or Google Meet is that we can physically only see 16 on a screen at one time. That's the limitation. So I think that my understanding is that Google's working on making more be available in this tile format if you have tile turned on Google Meet, but like Zoom does, for example. But in the meantime, usually the 16 that you see on the screen at any one time are those that came in earliest or mic in and talk. So when somebody decides to mic in and talk, then they become on the screen is one of the 16. And I can see right now we already have 43 people joined. So you're not seeing all 43, but just so you know, that little limitation with regard to Google Meet. And I keep saying Google Hangouts Meet because they changed the name. The Hangouts is no longer in there, and it's now Google Meet as they refer to it. Okay, so Rick, it's 10 o'clock. I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint, and then you can take over for the introduction.
Okay. Well, let me welcome you all. This is the first in a series of about 6 different seminars. What's been unique and what's happened of recent, we've all been moved into this this COVID lockdown, this pandemic type mode, where what has happened is the traditional face-to-face and the face-to-face versus the online has kind of changed. I mean, the way we do things has changed, and I think there's some good things that can come out of this. I mean, I know that this is not the way anybody wanted to move into this, but I think what it's done is it's shown many people that there's a lot of options and opportunities that can be done in an online fashion. But online takes on a different kind of terminology, or takes on a different definition, if you would. We now have not only face-to-face and asynchronous online, but we now have entered into the mode of synchronous training and teaching, which for most people, we've always had access to that. And we've always had the ability to utilize synchronous teaching, but it's rarely done. I mean, most folks will use, whatever we've had. We've had Blackboard Collaborate. We've had, in the past years, we've had something called Wimba. We had Illuminate for a period of time. There have been a whole number of different things that are out there. But we have Blackboard Collaborate Ultra now, and some people will use those, but they use them as just more for clarification and less for initial or direct instruction. So we now have 3 different modes of face-to-face, the hybrid approach, and then the online synchronous and asynchronous. So we've got all kinds of blended learning approaches. And what we thought would be of great value, because we are in that blended learning mode and we are all utilizing more and more online tools, synchronous, asynchronous. And if you provide a synchronous class, or even a face-to-face class, or some kind of a blended learning approach, the use of the tools within Blackboard are some tremendous savings. They are some tremendous clarifications, and they allow us to blend certain things into all of our teaching and the learning that we're looking to assist our students to do. So having said that, we've got some seminars that we've got scheduled and are running starting today that I think will help us to do that. We've got some basic things and some things you may already know and some things that you may not know. So we're going to kind of share that and kind of open some things up for lots of opportunities. So this morning, John is starting this off with a session on how we structure the Blackboard course shell and show us some basic things of what we can do. So John, I'll turn this over to you, and then we will certainly open things up for questions and other demonstrations. We have Nicole Carlin's on with us. We have Alicia Castles and Shannon Connick from the CIT RMUO instructional designers, so they will be assisting along the way as well. So John, turn this over to you, sir.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Okay, as you can see on the screen here, I hope everybody can see it adequately. One of the things I want to mention is that as we move through here, we're not going to just talk to you. We're going to also demonstrate live in Blackboard. Either with the instructional designers, Rick or myself, will take different pieces and show you how to do some certain things. And like he said, it's going to be recorded and it'll be up on this whole session will be up on our Blackboard site. And if you open up Blackboard. You should be able to see that Blackboard shell that we're sharing with all the faculty. On the screen here, it says CIT Org-C, Center for Innovative Teaching Organization. That's the name of the Blackboard shell that's open to all of you. And there's a lot of good resources out there, and this will be, recorded session will be one of those. Please, as Rick has already mentioned, feel free to stop and ask questions at any time. Now, it is a little cumbersome sometimes in Google Meet to open up your mic, but that would be the time when you want to make sure you open up your mic in, and just interrupt, and I'll answer questions. Rick will answer questions, instructional designers, whoever is appropriate to answer your question, because we want to make this as interactive as possible, and in addition to being a demonstration. Also, we have a chat feature that's available that you probably already are familiar with in Google Meet. So Rick is going to monitor that as we go through. So if you have a question you'd prefer to raise or a comment you'd prefer to state in the chat session, that'll be fine. And then he can interrupt for us when it's appropriate to answer those questions, or he will, or direct it to someone. Also, I wanted to mention that the last point on the slide here, think about what concepts related to what we're presenting today that you might want to see covered in more depth. And at the end of the session, Rick's going to have, in the conclusion of today's session, he's going to ask you for your feedback directly on what elements you think that you need further elaboration on, and then we can put some kind of training together to address those. This is quite a challenge in 6 two-hour sessions over the next 2 weeks to try to put together everything that anybody needs to know about Blackboard, because we have such a varied audience. There's some people who have never used Blackboard before that we're addressing today, some people that are very, very well adept at using Blackboard. But the difference here, and the reason we had to kind of change gears in terms of what we were presenting, because quite frankly, I had this idea to present certain seminars as soon as possible. And we got kind of sidetracked in the spring because of the coronavirus, and the name of this seminar series was going to be going paperless. But in other words, how do you use Blackboard effectively, even for face-to-face courses? And with the pandemic, with now going into kind of a reopening of the university under tenuous circumstances in the fall, and with the concept of virtual rotated classes, which you probably heard something about, it's not yet totally decided how that's going to work, but we decided to alter the maybe two seminar series we were going to have into 6, and elaborate on all different forms, as Rick already pointed out, which includes face-to-face, hybrid courses, asynchronous online, and synchronous online. And we had to separate synchronous from asynchronous because of the potential for virtual rotation, and for the potential of you maybe having to decide at certain times when your courses are forced online to do exactly what we're doing here, using something like Collaborate Ultra or Google Meet, which we're using now, directly with your students as a full class, the synchronous, in other words, online modality. So we're going to address all of those as we work our way through. And I beg your patience as we cover things that you may already understand. There's hopefully a lot of people here who don't. So we're going to get going now with the content. So here we go. I think I mentioned most of this already. These are the different types, for clarification, of types of courses you may encounter in the fall. And that would be on-ground face-to-face, fully online courses, which if you've done it in the way most of us have done it in the past, it would be almost all or all asynchronous, meaning that you wouldn't have these full class presentations using something like Google Meet. Synchronous online courses, where they will meet at scheduled times using video conferencing software that I mentioned before. This might come into play half and half when you're working with virtually rotated courses, for example, or it might come into play in the 15th week of the semester after Thanksgiving, where we have already agreed to move to a totally online environment. And as you're teaching your classes that last week before final exam week, or the 16th week of the semester, you may want to move some of your class meetings to a synchronous mode as well there. We also mentioned about hybrid 50-50, virtually rotated, and that formal definition of that, as well as the formal definition of remotely delivered course, is in negotiations right now, and you should be hearing more about those terms within the next, hopefully, I don't know, soon. Okay, so here's the first topic that we wanted to cover today. Modifying current courses and use of historical courses on the Blackboard homepage. So I think you can see here in this particular presentation slide here that I have cut. This is what it looks like when you first go into Blackboard. And right here, if you can see, it says current courses. And this is a list of courses that you're supposed to maintain for what you want to look at right now, as opposed to historical courses, which is every course that you've taught in the past that you are designated as an instructor. I think what some people don't understand or don't realize is that this can be custom tailored by you so that you only have under current courses the 4, 5, 6 courses that you're either currently working on or currently teaching, so that you don't have to scroll through an inordinate number of courses because it just keeps getting added to over here every time a new semester starts, and you're automatically assigned to a Blackboard shell, since our Patriot system automatically generates to Blackboard an entry for you for every course, regardless of whether it's online, on ground, or hybrid. So you probably want to know how to alter that. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to escape out of this for a minute, and I'm going to go live into Blackboard, and then I'm going to show you here under current courses. If you can see real carefully here where I'm pointing here, there's this little gear up in the upper right-hand corner, and it says Manage Current Course Module Settings. If you click on that, whoop, I have to log in because I wasn't logged in too early before, as you all know. We get the, there we go. Okay, here's what you end up with, is looking at all of the courses that you have currently been assigned to teach in the past. If there's no check marks there, then it does not appear in the current course listing. But if you scroll down, and obviously I've taught a lot of courses in the past, so here's one, for example, that is clicked all the way through. So this means that this particular course is going to appear not only in the historical course listing, but also in your current course listing. So you can turn them on and off very easily. All you do is click over here and it turns them all off. So then that one would not appear in your current course listings to the right, but it would still always be available to you under historical courses. So if you click it back on, it will appear. And as you see down here, here's 3 courses that is currently in my current course list. Notice that this is one I taught the first 8 weeks of summer. This is the one that I taught last summer, the same course. And this is a course I'm teaching right now in the second 8 weeks of summer. I keep the one that I taught last summer because that's the last time I taught that course, so that I can copy it if I need to, anything from here into my current shell. But I wanted everything else turned off. Even though I've been assigned courses to teach for fall 20, when they came and appeared here, I turned them off. I went into here by doing this, clicking on the fall ones because I'm not ready to work with those yet, so that I would have a very limited number of courses here. As you can see, this is it. So I've got the one from the Center for Innovative Teaching that's available to all faculty. And then this one I just got done teaching in first 8 weeks. This one is from last summer, as I'm teaching this one this summer. And then I have these for demonstration purposes to you today. But that's all I would have in there until I'm ready to start actually developing my courses or trying to get material into Blackboard for my courses for the fall, at which time I would go into here, like I just showed you, click, and then on the left-hand side there, check those courses that I want to appear, so that you can control the complete historical list and just get a subset of that historical list based on what you want to do. So that's my first topic that I just wanted to show you to make sure that everybody understood how that worked. I know that from my own department and helping other people through that, they spent years on Blackboard, never knew you could do that. So I just wanted to make sure that you did. So any questions on that particular concept before I move on?
John, just a comment from me. The Center for Innovative Teaching Blackboard shell that is listed there, that will show up at the bottom of your list of all courses, because you're all listed in that course shell as not as instructors, but you're listed in there as students. If for some reason that is not showing up at the bottom of your list please drop me an email and I will make sure that you are added to that shell. That's kind of a work in progress, and there's a lot of information up there, which we may
And
show
this
you.
is what it looks like when you go into it.
Perfect.
Okay, no questions on that particular topic, then we'll move on. The next topic that I wanted to talk about is let's see, make sure I didn't skip something here. Nope. Okay, so the next topic is going to be how to copy Blackboard content from a previous course. I think I had mentioned, and let me just demonstrate that for a minute. As you can see right here, I'm currently in the process of teaching a second 8-week summer course, and I have displayed here the course that I used last summer. So whenever this particular Blackboard shell for this summer showed up in my current course listing, it was completely empty. It was just simply, as you know, the template that is automatically built from the generation from Patriot automatically to Blackboard. And if you had a course previously that you taught and you want to copy a lot of the content or all the content over, you would go into this course first and then copy it into here. And right now, the instructional designers are going to take you through and demonstrate for you the way in which you can do that most effectively. Just for those of you who haven't before, there are a lot of specific options in there that in the copy process that you probably want to know about or ask more about. So I'm gonna now take my screen off and ask the instructional designer. I'm not sure who's going to do it, if it's going to be you know, Alicia or Shannon or Nicole, but whoever wants to take over and do that, you could share your screen and walk us through that.
Hi, this is Shannon. Rick, we discussed before that I have a different role in Blackboard than most instructors. I have the admin role. So we discussed using your login and your screen for doing this demonstration. Is that still how you want to proceed? Okay. So Rick, are you going to share your screen or, okay, cool.
All right, what you're seeing is just my course shell and my course listings. I have a tendency to keep more courses on my current courses that John was just talking about, only because from time to time as I'm teaching certain courses, there are certain things that I may want to go back and reference in a previous course. Even though I've copied everything over, there's still some things I don't want to initially copy over, but I want to bring over from time to time. Such things as maybe announcements or certain things that I've said in a previous discussion board that I want to make sure is restated. So I'll keep some of my courses up. So like I've got the last 2 years worth of courses up for a technology-based course that I have. So let me go into this one, and it's just a course shell. And what you can do with this, as you come down, and Shannon, I'll let you just talk through this, and I'll show everybody the screens as we get there.
Sure. So bear with me. So if you want to go in under the control panel and under packages and utilities. I'm trying to get my screen so I can see what Rick's doing and what I'm doing at the same time. Okay, and then from the packages and utilities menu, you want to select course copy.
Sorry.
No, no worries.
Put these others up just so that they don't confuse. Okay.
Okay, so here, there's a couple different things you can do. If you know the course ID that you want to copy into, you can just enter that right into that the space by the destination course ID field. If you don't, you can click on Browse. And this will bring up a menu and you can search. And I believe, Rick, these are just the courses. You'll just see a list of the courses that you have, that you're the instructor for.
Correct. What you'll have within that are several pages of courses that start from everything. Is one of the things that RMU and Blackboard does not do is erase any course shell ever. Everything is archived, everything, forever. So you've got everything there. And they're usually done in chronological order, with the first page being your oldest. And so you're going to need to find the newest courses that you're looking to transfer things into. So if you click this button on the last page, or this one, you can scroll over one page at a time, or you can go to the last page, and that may be what you're looking for, or then you can scroll back to where certain courses are. It's just a matter of finding the courses that you've got and what you're looking to do within that.
Rick, do you have the option to sort the courses that are shown here? Like, can you click on, for example, the date created?
Yeah, you can set parameters up in this menu. You can look by the course ID, instructor name, description,
Sure.
all courses. You can do it by date. I mean, there's just all kinds of parameters that you can put in here and then search appropriately for it. So it's just a matter of playing with that, and that'll save you from scrolling across pages and of previous courses. Sometimes the ID number.
Just as a reminder, those of you who have your mics still turned, please turn them on. Rick, your mic's turned off.
Yeah, I did when it was given the feedback. Michelle Cole, that was you giving the feedback on that. Just keep your mic off. I think you may have your phone open as well. It will give that. So yeah, you can sort by course ID. You can sort by instructor. You can sort by name or description, and it will give you whatever course you're looking for. So that's an option as well, but it's a matter of finding the particular course that you're looking for. Once you've done that, Shannon, go ahead.
Sure. So you find the course that you want to copy into, and you select that course. There you go. And next, you have the option here let me see if I can make this a little bigger. I'm having a hard time seeing Rick's screen. Okay, yeah. So the content areas here. Generally, what I do is I select all of them, because you're going to want to copy most of these over. And then you can scroll down there. Let me see here. There's a few that you definitely want to leave unchecked. And then, so these ones, generally, I select everything. Under discussion boards, the default here is to include starter posts for each thread, and they'll be made anonymous. I always make sure to select the one under that says include only the forums with no starter posts. So the first option, the default option, will show the first post from the students in your previous course, which there's really not a good reason to have that. I mean, I've never used that. So yeah, you want to select the second one there. And then the next options, sorry for this looks a little bit different than it does on my, for my access role. But so I think generally I select all of these. And Rick, if you have anything to add to this, since this is your.
Yeah, I just know that there are certain things that I have set up and certain things that I haven't. And even if I haven't set, like in certain things I haven't set tasks or tests or wikis, I'll click them anyway. It doesn't hurt in it.
Yeah, if you don't have any of these in your course, that's fine. That's fine to select that. It just won't copy
Shannon, I think the easiest way is just to click at the top to select everything, and then just go down and deselect the few that you mentioned, which are really appropriate for discussion. So if you're copying over from a previous course, you obviously had a lot of students engage in discussions, and you don't want those discussion posts copied over. So that's why Shannon was saying don't select those. So again, the easiest thing, like Rick said, everything, it doesn't hurt to copy everything else over. So just one click at the top and then deselect those few items that you want is probably the easiest. And while I'm interjecting, I just wanted to mention that probably the easier way to do this, or at least I find it, is remember that you're always copying from the old one to the new one. So you have to go into the old one first. But before you go into the old one, what I would suggest is to write down the 6-digit ID number for the new one that's in your current course listing. And then you can put that 6-digit ID number right in where it says, next to where it says browse, and then you don't have to worry about browsing through all those. And it just simplifies the process. It takes it down from maybe 5 minutes to 2 minutes to do this, if that's important to you.
Yeah, thanks, John. I agree. That's usually how I do it. I write down the ID number first before I copy them over. So yeah, I think, Rick, you can scroll down then. And then the next section, copy links to course, or file attachments rather. Under here you have the options. I always links, and I always leave the default selected for this. And you scroll down. Rick, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, okay. That's accurate. I do the same thing.
Cool. So under enrollments, you want to make sure you leave that unchecked because you don't want all of the students from your previous course in your new course. And then you can just select submit. Right, so I think Gavin just had a comment that I wanted to address. Right, so yeah, I'll get to that in a minute, I guess. Okay, so yeah, Carol, we can easily provide a tutorial with screenshots or a job aid of sorts. I think we kind of already have one in the works that we're going to post on the CIT. Right, Rick?
Yeah. Alicia showed me one this morning. It's pretty accurate. It's pretty simple. Shows you how to do this. What we will do is with this recording, when we post that up, we will also post that handout up as well that will kind of walk you through the steps of that. Okay.
Cool. Okay, so Rick, this is different. This screen is different than what I see again. So if you want to.
Well, that's just back to the default screen.
Right.
Whatever I had open. So under the course copy, if you go to that, this was the course. This was your the course that I was copying, and it would have copied over to the target. You'll notice that once that course is done, it says course copy action queried. An email will be sent when the process is complete. And that just depends on how much you're sending over. Sometimes it's instantaneous, even though you think you have a lot, and other times it's not. Just depends on how busy the system is, what's going on, how much material you've got copied. And then when you go into the course that you've copied things into, which I believe was this one. No, it wasn't. Sorry, I forget which one I copied into. I got so many courses. It will just tell you when you get into that particular shell like this. It says, lab is complete to access the detailed log. And it just basically has copied everything into this particular shell is all that it's done. Okay. And so everything that you want. Now the problem will be you've got things copied and it will automatically show up at the bottom of where you had. So you're going to have to go in and reorganize some things to align them. And we can show you how to do, John's going to show you how to do some things in the left-hand column. But you'll notice everything that we copied over in this particular course shell showed up at the bottom of a whole list of things that I've got. This is actually a lab shell that I use for students to actually, when I teach a course in applied instructional technology that allows the students to kind of go in and create their own Blackboard shells to design and set up lessons. And these are some example lessons that I've put in of others. And then this is the new information here: course information, course calendar, topics of study, journal club, assignments, and article. That was what we copied over from the other course shell. So everything is there in the format that we had it in the other shell. If there are things I want to modify, like if I don't want this information here, and John's going to show you this in a minute, I just simply drag it up, to where I want it to go. So really quite simple in doing that. So, questions or comments and about course copy?
So I just wanted to interject really quick and say that it depends on the way your course, the course that you're copying to and the course that you're copying from are structured. But if it makes sense, if you want to if you just kind of want a clean slate to start with, you can go into your new course that you're copying into and perform a bulk delete beforehand so that you won't have all that extra stuff that's brought over from the template in Patriot. Rick, do you ever do that, or is that something? I
don't, but you can certainly show us how to do that.
Yeah, Shannon, that would be really helpful if you could walk us through that.
Sure. So it's really simple. It's under the same menu that the course copy is. So if you go under packages and utilities there, 1 second, let me just.
Hold on, I'm going to go in and open up a different.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
Open that's a blank course shell here for what you're doing. This is traditionally what the template model is that RMUO has established. So, and where do you want me to go with this?
Go under packages and utilities. I believe that's where it is. And you see the first option there is bulk delete.
Bulk delete, okay.
Mm-hmm. So, and then you're just going to want to click all of that stuff. The only thing you don't want to delete is the users. That would be bad. So yeah, you want to go down there and select, and there's no select all for this. It's kind of annoying. You have to go through and select each thing individually, but yeah. And then, yeah, announcements, groups, discussion boards, test surveys, pools, and just kind of like in the same vein that we were talking about before, if you might not actually have all of these items in the blank course, and that's okay. And then Blackboard makes you type the word delete down there to confirm. And then you just want to click submit. There you go. And so you see now where it says weeks 1, 2, 3, 4 there on the side navigation panel, it's there's that little weird blank box there because there's no content in there. If you want to, Rick, select week 1, you can see that it's taken out that template that is in by default in all the courses. So if you do this first and then perform your course copy, you don't have to go back in and manually delete all of those things that were brought over from the template.
Shannon, I have a question real quick. This is Heather Herstein.
Sure.
When I have done this bulk delete before, I can't find a way to actually delete that week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, because when I copy everything, it brings in those content folders.
Right.
So I have to go back and manually delete those folders anyways.
Well, the beauty of that, Heather, is when you delete all this out and then you go to copy things over, you'd only have to copy over what you want. So you could not copy those blank folders over. You will have.
When I'm copying in from a course that is full and I'm copying my week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, then those folders copy over. So then I have 2 week 1s, week 2s.
Correct. And that's what will happen. In other words, they will not propagate into, or they will not copy over into the existing structure. You're copying the whole files over. So what you end up having to do is go back in and manually delete out the blank folders that are already in there. In other words, the week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that exist in the target shell. You will have to delete those out. So they automatically go.
Yeah. So in my experience, and Heather, if you have something, if you want to talk offline and I can kind of see specifically what you're referring to, I'd be happy to do that because, Blackboard has all kinds of interesting quirks, we'll call them. So sometimes, yeah, but typically my experience has been if I perform the bulk delete first, it won't, there will not be these blank extra folders in there. Those don't, I won't see those with the new, in the new copy. If you this is interesting though, if you rename your folders, like for instance, if you change it to say from week 1 to topic 1 or unit 1, Blackboard doesn't know what to do. So then it will have duplicate empty folders there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and Shannon and Rick, I'm going to be demonstrating that coming up very soon.
Very cool.
I will say one thing that I have used the bulk delete for that has been really useful is when I'm copying over content and it creates, so I want to copy my grade center columns, but then I end up having multiple grade center columns because there are some that are defaulted. That has worked really well with the bulk delete.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that's a really good use for it, definitely, is to kind of clean up your grade center before you copy new content into there. Thanks for sharing that.
That's because that's a problem I always have had in the past. So yeah, the bulk delete does help significantly with that. And we're going to address that in one of the other seminars coming up too, when we talk about assessments. So all of these issues that they're discussing will be further elaborated on as we move through with live demos.
Right. So if there's no other questions about this specific process, I think we can move on. But yeah, let me know if anybody has any questions. John, you're muted. If you are, I can see you talking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Rick, if you could let your screen go so that I can present. Sorry, that's a common mistake from all of us.
Everyone's done it.
Yeah. Okay, so you should be seeing my screen right now. And this is what, just as a quick review in case you couldn't see the screen real well, how do you begin the course copy? Well, you go to the left navigation panel, you go to Packages and Utilities, and as you can see here, you select Course Copy. And the bulk delete she was talking about is right up 2 items above it. It's the first one. So Packages and Utilities. Sometimes it's confusing. Do you go to Course Tools? Do you go to Customization? Do you go to Packages and Utilities? For the course copy and for the bulk delete, you go, as I just showed you here, and Shannon went through so well, Course Copy. Okay, now what I want to talk about is the left navigation panel itself. So before you start working with trying to put content into week 1, week 2, or topic 1, topic 2, however you decide to organize your left navigation panel, you need to know how to customize your left navigation panel. And so you're not forced to use the default template that you see on the left here, which comes with every new course that's put up for you to teach. Course shell, I should say. So if you look at, for example, at the left and then at the right, this is one of my customized left navigation panels based on what Shannon and Rick were just talking about with regard to how you have to maybe get rid of week 1, week 2, all the way down through week 8, because I put customized names for those depending on the kind of course that I'm teaching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about 5 different examples of what I think is very important to do before you actually work in Blackboard. This comes from my IT background in terms of everything being, every process following a systems approach. And the first thing in the systems approach is analysis and design. So if you're going to try to customize your left navigation panel, which I suggest everybody do to some extent, maybe not as much as others, depending upon the type of course, then I think it's important for you to map out what you want to do before you go in there and start fooling around, because it's going to take you 5 times longer to customize your left navigation panel if you don't have a mapping. So what I did was I developed a couple of tables here so that you could see how a mapping might occur for different types of courses. So the first one I want to do as an example is a course that I teach. It's a 15-week undergrad combination course that meets once a week on Wednesday evenings. This is the actual left navigation panel from when I taught it last in the fall of 2019. So this would be a perfect example of how you would want to use Blackboard to supplement a face-to-face course. Not an online course, not a hybrid course, but a face-to-face course that meets every 15 weeks. So as you can see on the left-hand side here, this is what is provided to you in the default template. And what I've done is changed it to meet my needs for that particular course. I don't need to start here. That would be appropriate for an online course. I'm going to be there the first night. This is an on-ground course, so I get rid of that. I do want to keep the announcements, but I want to call it instructor announcements. I do want to keep the discussion board in case I want to use it occasionally for certain things in my on-ground course. Like, for example, if I want to flip the classroom to a certain extent, I might want to do that. I also want to open up for them to be able to put in questions to me especially since this class only meets once a week, for example. So in other words, you can customize and build your own items on the right and get rid of some of the ones on the left from the template if you so choose. Then I would have to, or as I did, got rid of all 8 of these, just simply deleted them right from the very start. And I built my own here based on copy over from a previous time that I taught the course. So those would come in. And then I like to specify dates so that it's easier for students and so on. So I'll say, for example, since we meet once a week, for week 1, which would be August 28th. So that would be the Wednesday night of the first week's class and all the way down through here. Keep in mind, these are just examples. I'm not trying to tell you to do it this way. I'm just trying to show you different examples of what you can do and how you might want to customize. And then I'm going to show you and walk you through very quickly how you customize so that you can make your own determinations for what you want to do to the left navigation panel. I also want to put, and you can see, so the template that's given to you is shown right here from start here down to control panel. So it's very sparse in terms of what they provide to you. And in a face-to-face course, depending on what you're teaching, this one happens to be a hands-on course because it's a programming course. So I do give them a lot of instructions for what I want them to do the subsequent week. And I put all of their assignments out there as well. And then I have them submit all of their assignments through Blackboard, and then I grade them and give them back in Blackboard and so on. You can or can't do that. That's all, those options are up to you. And that will dictate how complex or not complex your left navigation panel becomes. So here are some additional course materials so that, for example, there's specific software that needs to be installed at the beginning of a course. That's how they find the information about how to install it. And I go through that in class. The handouts for how to use the operating system in this specialized course. The handouts that I'm using for instruction throughout the course can be easily found here without having to go through all 15 weeks to find something I maybe gave them before. The chapter slides, even though they're embedded in each week for the slides that I'm going to be using that week, I also provide them in the left navigation panel so they're easily accessible. Same thing for videos that I want them to watch. And then I also customize this part before the control panel and into several sections, additional course materials, as I just mentioned, and I make a group called Blackboard resources and also RMU resources before I get to the control panel. So I set all of this up and build those items in the left navigation panel before I start putting content in or changing content from what I copied over from a previous course. Once you do this for one course, as Rick and Shannon showed you, then when you copy it over, the next time you teach that course, it's all there. The most work, and it's kind of tedious for me, is just to simply get rid of those 8 weeks because they won't overlay because they're named differently. So Blackboard will keep those in the course copy as well as put all the new ones in. And then you simply have to get rid of start here and announcements, discussion and so on, and then keep the ones that were named differently that got copied over automatically from your course copy. So it sounds like you have to do this every time. You don't necessarily. It's not quite that cumbersome, but you do have to move things around, which I'm going to demonstrate how to do in Blackboard within the left navigation panel before you get started. So before I go into quickly, the other 5 examples, based on, you can see how easy or complex this can be depending on what you want to do with your course and how much you want to give the students through Blackboard. any questions on what I'm discussing here, or anybody want to interject and ask anything?
John, your point to that copy over and then the week 1, 2, 3, the existing in your structure, I think is what Heather was talking about before. In other words, that you have to go in and delete out those things because it doesn't overwrite.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the key point with that, and there's really no way around it. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay, then let me go into example 2. All right, now this is a different course that I teach. It's a face-to-face undergraduate course, and it's 15 weeks, so it's fairly typical. It either met, I don't remember if it met on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or on Tuesday, Thursday at this particular point. But here's the full throttled default template that you get when you first start the course. And this is all I used for that particular course on the right. So depending upon how little or how complicated you want to make this, because remember, it's a face-to-face course, you're talking to them every class period. Okay, so you may find little need to put out a whole lot of stuff. But what I did do was provided course information. So if you click on that link, it would be the syllabus, it would be textbook information, all of that kind of thing that you would want out there at the beginning. Course assignments. In other words, when I would tell them in class, okay, go out to course assignments, make sure you submit it through Blackboard. And then they would just click on this left navigation panel, and then all of the assignments will be listed. In a subsequent session, we're going to show you how to build those assignments and how to put them out there sequentially as items of assessment so that they're immediately accessed by the students. Field assignments, those are, going out into schools. This is a special type of course that has field assignments where students have to go. So that had special instructions. Any handouts that I gave during the course, what I put here. And then I broke the course down, and this has made it easy. I broke the course down into what we're going to cover the first 5 weeks, second 5 weeks, and third 5 weeks. Kathleen, did you have a question? Anybody have a question? I thought I saw mics on. No? Okay.
Kathleen
did type a question in the chat box. I don't know if you're able to see it.
She said, do you label, she asked, do you label a tab as required coursework and then put the folders for week 1, etc. under that?
Yes, exactly. Yes. This is only the links that you see in the left navigation panel. Then, like for example, when the student would click on course content part 1, then they would see either items listed or items and folders, depending on how you structure that inside. And actually, that's what we're going to get to in session 2 on Wednesday, is how you set up the items and the folders and how you make those conscious choices for a design within each one of these links. So did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
I do have one other question, though.
Sure.
I've heard comments made that you shouldn't create too many folders within folders within folders in a Blackboard course because it makes it confusing for students. How many levels is reasonable before it becomes too confusing? I
agree with that perspective, and I don't go more than one level. In other words, within if the student clicks on course content part 1, then I usually have either a series of folders or items or a combination of both. But when you click on a folder, I never have folders within folders, or rarely have folders within folders. I think it does confuse students. So I would suggest that if you're, for best practice, that you only have one level of folders within each link from the left navigation panel. If you like it otherwise, that's perfectly fine. It's not like if you're going through Quality Matters when Shannon or Alicia approve a course, they're gonna nail you on that, I don't think, but I think that it's probably not a good idea.
Thank you.
I would concur with that. You want to keep the whole idea for navigation and what John is showing everybody for navigation on the left-hand side also moves into when you get into your individual folders and the layout of your material. This is all of a classroom management issue and how you structure your classes. You know, Kathleen, you don't want to, I agree with John on this. You don't want to go too deep because initially you say, well, they can follow the navigation and follow where I'm at. And you're absolutely right. They probably can go 2-3 levels deep and you're probably not going to lose them. It's when they try and go back into information and find it later that says, oh, okay, I don't know where this is. And now you've got them 3 or 4 layers, 3 or 4 folders deep, and they'll never find it. So I would say in everything that you do, keep it simple, as simple a design as you can possibly do. Just because you can get elaborate and do level deep doesn't mean you should, because it's a matter of student access and how they process. The bottom line is this: if the student is spending all of their time trying to navigate and figure out where you want them to go, then they're not focusing their time on the content and the process of learning. So you want to keep your navigation and everything you're doing as simplistic as possible. The key element of what John is showing, what he's talking about here, is that you are establishing a routine. And this is not a one-size-fits-all. In other words, what John does is not what you have to do or what I have to do. It's right for John, it's right for his class, it's right for the different types of classes that we all teach. Think about this a second. You know, when you go in to teach your face-to-face classes, as we all have, the way you teach is not the way I teach or the way anybody else teaches. It is you, it's your personality, it's your design, it's what you know and understand is the best way to deliver the material. This is the same thing. The cookie cutter or template approach doesn't always work in the online either. Use your personality, allow things to come through, but organize it. And I would tell you this way: organize it in such a way that it makes sense to you, that it is logical in the way you want to lay things out and format. And if it makes sense to you, it will begin to make sense to your students. They will start to understand your routine, so that if they go into John's class, they know he has a certain routine. They know where they're going to go, what they're going to do. They come into my class, they know the same thing. This is the same for you. That's what we mean by you use a consistent structure, but it doesn't have to be the same as everybody else.
And Rick, if you don't mind, I wanted to just give a little bit of a historical perspective on that. I think that quite frankly, I'm going to go out on a limb here a little bit and say that in the past, I think that the focus, especially with online courses coming through RMUO, was more toward trying to guide you to, and I'm talking about from 2011, 12 on, not recently, guide you to kind of following the template and not deviating from it much. And we're here to say, no, that's not necessarily the case. In other words, depending upon whether you're using Blackboard for face-to-face, online, on ground, and what Rick just said in terms of your own styles and so on, we feel that you can still meet quality standards quite well with online, on ground, face-to-face, whatever kind of course, and still customize your left navigation panel to your liking, as long as it's logical, it makes sense, and the students don't have difficulty following it. So I just want to kind of emphasize that, just like Rick tried to, because we're trying to do what I would call a cultural shift here, and get everybody to understand that it's a tool that you use that is very customizable. And as long as you're following the general, not the specific, but general guidelines of quality matters, because the specifics always are optional. In other words, they become based on style of teaching. So I hope that helps in terms of where we're going with these different examples. And as Rick said, these are just examples. They're just my examples. That you could decide to call these things lots of things differently, organized for more or less items in the left navigation panel. But the more and the more items you put in the left navigation panel, the less likely you're going to have to go into subfolders in the links. But then on the other hand, it's a balance. You don't want to put too many links in the left navigation panel to make the left navigation panel too complex. Right. So Rick, did you have another comment to add? Yeah,
just a quick comment, because I've had some conversation with Nicole and Alicia and Shannon on this regard. You know, they're open, in fact, more so very interested in everybody being able to teach and provide their own. But by the same token, we don't want to throw everybody in the deep end of the pool and say, design it any way you want. We will keep structures in place. You know, the left-hand side with the week 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll put that in place. And if you want to customize, we will certainly assist you in doing so. But if you like that week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, whatever and however, then it works. You know, we will keep it simple. Dave, you got a question? I'm sorry, I thought Dave was waving to make a question.
There is a question in the chat box, Rick.
Thank you. I was too
From
busy.
Joe.
John says, how do you create those buttons for the left hand? John is going to show you that here in about 30 seconds, I think. So yeah, we're just, you know, we're looking to keep this as simple as possible, but move everybody into the realm of actually teaching and designing lessons that establish a routine and make sense to you and will make sense to your students based upon how you teach, how they learn, and the specific content that you have. This is why I'm not a believer in John. What he's alluding to is the fact that there's not a one size fits all. Every course online, if it's an asynchronous course or if you're using it as a blended learning approach to augment synchronous or face-to-face, which is what Blackboard can be used for, which is why John was saying we were talking about this as a paperless session, doesn't have to look the same. It has to make sense to you and how you know the content needs to unfold for your students.
Okay, so I brought up the next example 3, while Rick was commenting, and notice that this layout here that I'm suggesting on the right-hand side is much closer to the original template. And the reason is because this is one of my fully online courses. And this template was originally built for online courses. It wasn't built necessarily to supplement on-ground or face-to-face courses. That's the full customization that you saw in the 2 previous examples, both of which were for face-to-face courses. So if you're deviating from online course and you're using Blackboard to supplement, my suggestion is that your left navigation panel should be more customized rather than less. That's just a generalization, but again, according to what you need. So when I would copy this fully online course over, because I had taught it in the past, these links that you see here will come automatically over. And then I'm going to have a lot of cleanup over here to do to get rid of a lot of the links that came through from the template when it was automatically generated by our Patriot to Blackboard system. So this particular online course is 8 weeks. It's a grad course. It meets once a week. Oh, I'm sorry, it doesn't meet once a week, excuse me, it's fully online. But what I put also in here to try to designate that other factors would also dictate how you build your left navigation panel. For example, the purpose of this course, integrating instructional technology at the grad level, is for teachers, for people who already have a degree coming back, post-bac to become a teacher. So they're graduate students coming back for learning how to implement technology in the classroom. And it doesn't work to just simply provide theory to them. It has to be hands-on. They do a lot of activity with working with different types of software, and that becomes a challenge in an online course. But that is the challenge, and that should be exemplified in the kinds of things that I provided in the left-hand navigation panel. So the way that I would organize this for a theory hands-on practice course might be a little different than if it was theory, basically discussion course, like, for example, critical issues affecting American education. That is not hands-on. That's paper writing, that's sharing opinions, discussion boards, journal entries, and so on. So it's going to have to do with the nature of your course, how you design this. So as you can see here, this part over here from start here down to RMU bookstore, I have redesigned it this way. And what I did here was put what's going to be used most frequently in this class. Here is the discussion board. Here's the journal entries that they're going to have to engage in on a weekly basis. This is something special to this course. There's certain things in this course that have to be uploaded to a purchased database software portfolio system for teacher candidates that wouldn't be in yours, obviously. Keep the announcements and sending email right at the top so that they have that available. And then I just have everything listed by week. The only difference here is that I have the end dates. But because I have end dates and think it's important to do that, then when I copy over, I'm going to have two sets. I'm going to have these, and I'm going to have to go and manually delete these. And then I have these two sections built to replace this section over here, so that I segregate the RMU resources from Blackboard resources, so that with a title. And I'll show you how to build these titles like this one, and I'll show you how to build the links in just a minute. That was, let's see, that's example number 3. Real quickly, I'm going to bring up example number 4. Here's another fully online one. It's the one I was talking about before. It's a critical issues affecting American education course. It is more theory and discussion based rather than hands-on. Its design is a little bit different. So down here, for example, it's got writing involved. And so this is, by the way, from fall of 19. So the next time I teach this, I'm going to replace this out with new information on APA 7 rather than APA 6, but those would be the guidelines, the handouts, the links to Purdue OWL and other places, so that they can appropriately follow APA when they do a lot of the assignments that are required in this type of a course, which you, of course, did not see this in the previous example that I had, because they don't write papers in the hands-on course. So again, your left navigation panel can be customized based on not just the fact that it's an on-ground course, I'm sorry, an online course for graduate students, but it could be because of the nature of the course and the content of the course. And that's, I think, one of the things that we wanted to get across. So that was example 4. And then the last example that I have, example 5, is an on-ground converted to synchronous online. This is what you may be having to do in the fall, based on the pandemic, and it's what we had to do the second half of the spring term in many cases. So for example, for this course, or for my COBOL programming course, it was a totally face-to-face course. It was designed to be a face-to-face course, but quickly had to turn it to online. Put it online. You had a couple choices. It could be synchronous online, where you maintain the meeting times that were originally established for that course, or you turned it into asynchronous and kind of let them on their own, gave them directions in Blackboard for what they needed to do on their own time. For the COBOL programming course in the spring, I made it so that they had to come every night, like they would have on Wednesday night from 6 to 8:50, and they had to come in through Google Meet. And I lectured, I helped them with examples, I showed them code, they showed me code, going back and forth as best we could. And the only thing I couldn't replicate was being able to see their screens in class and walk around and help them with their program. And I had programming assignments, so I had to use Google Meet on a one-on-one basis when they had issues. Then I would simply say, let's get on Google Meet and share your screen, show me what you're doing, and I can help you. So I think you understand the nature of taking a course that was never designed to be necessarily or approved to be online, having to go online. One option, it's not again a requirement, but an option is to go synchronously, as I just described. And then the way that I would go synchronously and build the Blackboard shell would be different. So when I actually converted from on ground in the middle of last semester to synchronous online, I had to alter my Blackboard shell and alter the links in the left navigation panel to be appropriate for synchronous instruction for the last 7 weeks of the course, plus final exam week. So when we went into the summer, all courses are online. I was teaching a doctoral course that was originally scheduled to be on ground. And so I had to convert, well, we all did that was teaching in the doctoral program. We decided as a group that we were going to conduct the majority of those classes synchronously online, so that the doctoral students would, again, whatever night they were deemed to come to campus, they would meet during that time synchronously. And so this is the Blackboard shell that I put together for them in advance, knowing that it was going to be synchronous online prior to it starting. And you can see that it's kind of like online. It has the welcome start here, but we have what we call a residency week where they had to be on ground for 2 classes, and they're used to that, and then the rest of it being online potentially. This one was for the Doc 8-week course. So what I did was even decided to further customize the left navigation panel. So required coursework, as you can see here, I set up a link before first class meeting. And then I emailed them a week in advance and told them to go into Blackboard, opened up the shell. This link was available and they could read through this. They could order their textbooks because that information was there. They could review the syllabus. They could see what I wanted them to read from the textbooks prior to the first class meeting. And then this was what we were going to do the first time we met synchronously the following week. And then subsequently, I had a layout, which I'll show you in a subsequent session, how within each link, I had folders built separately to distinguish what they needed to do ahead of time versus what I was going to do in class during the synchronous session. And then down here, what normally would be provided in the template with a limited amount, I expanded into this is what I think that they needed to have reference to during their class. And that included, for example, a link directly in the left navigation panel to their handbook for the doctoral program. Class meeting recordings, I recorded each one of the synchronous sessions and then put out in the left navigation panel links to each one of the classes, both as MP4 files, as YouTube links, and also, by the way, you can also put out the chat session. So you can cut and paste the content of the chat session and put it into a Word document, attach it, and put it out there for them to view, especially if they didn't attend class, or they missed class, or they missed part of class, or they have to review something from class that they didn't understand during the synchronous session, they would be available. So again, what I'm trying to get at here is that the customization of the left navigation panel can be dependent upon the type of course you're teaching, what kind of information the student needs to have or you think they need to have, and how accessible you want to make that information at their fingertips without having to go through, for example, a web of weekly links to find what they may have had before. So those are the 5 examples. Now I can go into a demonstration of how to manipulate that. But before I do that, and you can see now I'm live in Blackboard, I want to stop and ask if there are any questions, or Rick, if there are any questions in the chat session before we continue. Anybody?
Not seeing anything new in there, John.
Okay, very good. All right, so I'm going to go into one of my courses, the one I'm teaching now, for example. Maybe I better not do that. Never mind. I'm not going to do that one. I'll go into one so I can full width so that I don't screw something up. So I'll go into one of these old ones that I brought up before. Let's see, we'll go into this one. Notice that sometimes, depending upon the type of device you're using, your left navigation panel will disappear when you open up the course, and you see this blue bar over here. If you click anywhere on this blue bar or on this arrow that pops up when you move your cursor over here, it will expand and show you the left navigation panel. I don't know if that ever happened to you, but if it does, it's easy to bring up. So at this particular point, you can see that this was the original template that was brought in from it being automatically generated. And then you can see below that I've already copied into here from a previous course. And so both of them appear. And so what you end up having to do then is to go in here where it says week 1, for example, and you need to just say delete. And then you say delete content, delete. You have to say delete 3 times. And finally, week 1 will disappear. And you do that for all 8 of these so that you can use the ones that you copied over that were customized rather than using the default ones. So that's how easy it is to simply delete something from the left navigation panel. In terms of moving things around, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. The easiest is to simply drag, if you're not familiar with that. So for example, RMU library, I don't typically like up here. So if I wanted to use it below, I would just highlight it, go over to the left where you see the up and down arrow, simply hold down your left mouse key and drag it to wherever you'd like it to be. Leave up on the left mouse key down where you want it to be placed, and it places it there. So you can simply move things around in the left navigation panel. Another way to do that, it's not showing here. Typically, there's a button up here. I'll figure out that why that may not be showing, and I'll show you a little bit later. But anyway, that's one I use all the time, is the drag and drop, it's called. Anybody have any questions on that? I think that's pretty straightforward. Now, how do you like, for example, add a new item like this one down here? Well, you go up to the plus sign, and that would be called a content area. A content area would be a link to content. So you would simply click content area, and you would put the name in. Like, for example, I'm just going to build one here called test link. If I can spell right. Okay. And I'm going to say, yes, I want it available to users. And then I'm going to click submit. Notice that what it does is it builds it and it puts it down toward the end here. So you'll see the test link. And then you can just, let's say I wanted it up here right before the first week. Then I can just drag it there. Now notice there's this little gray box here. And now what that's saying is that there's no content in it. So if I would click on the link, it'll bring it up, but it'll say there's nothing in it yet, which is perfectly fine at this particular point. But then we'll show you in the next session how to build all those things. At any rate, you can see that, let's go back now to week 2, let's say. Okay, so that's how you add additional items, the test link that we built. Now, notice that there's a bolded item here that is not a link. Like I'm trying to click on it and there's no clicking. That's because if you go to the content area, that is what is referred to as a subheader. And what it allows you to do is to build a group name for groups of links that you want. So, for example, when I have course information here, that wasn't something that was in the template. You'll never see that unless you build it. So, again, just to build it, you would click on here, go down to subheader, and you would put the name in, like test subheader, or whatever you want to call it, and click submit, and it'll appear down at the bottom just like the item did before, and then you drag it to wherever you want it to be. So if I wanted to break, let's say after week 5, I could put it right there, and then the header would appear. Everybody follow that? Also, you might notice that for indentation purposes, I like to keep things indented under headers, but that comes in when you go to rename an item. For example, you have the ability to change the name of any link at any time that you want to, and I just put a bunch of little dots in there because you can't put spaces in to change the name. And then once you make the change, you click, and then it stays whatever you changed it to. You can also do the same thing for one of the headers that you created. You don't have to delete and re-enter one. You can simply rename it at any point in time. So that's the easiest way to move things. The only other thing that from the content menu that I use routinely are these little lines to break the groups. So what I do is use what is referred to as a divider. If I can get this to stay, and you just click on it. And then if you go down to the bottom, here's the dividers that I apparently added more than once here. But then you can also move those things around as well to put dividers in between your different content links or sections as you want. So that is really the essence of how you customize the left navigation panel. It's how you build them, how you delete them, how you rename things, and how you move them around. That gives you the option to change from the template that was provided to you routinely to whatever it is that you want it to be, to look like, or to be. Does anyone, I'm trying to go through it as quickly as possible so that we have enough time, but I don't want to overwhelm anybody either. Does anybody have any questions on the customization of the left navigation panel? Okay.
John, if you want, my shell is showing that other thing you didn't have. If you want me to show that, I can.
'em? Yeah, would you please?
Sure.
let me stop
I
mine.
think I can just take over. I think it lets me take it over. Nah. Oh, it's not letting me share right now. Surprise, surprise.
Okay, well, we'll go back to my screen, and we'll go back to the presentation itself. So you can see what I was trying to get at. Oh, whoops, I'm sorry, I didn't share yet. My fault. Okay, so you should be seeing my screen again. And this was the original slide that I had up, if you remember. And I was trying to show you that this is the default. And this was an example of one that I had built, customized. And so you can see that the start here, I just changed the name and used basically the same information, announcements, discussions I kept, but I moved send email from below here, whoops, but from below here, up here, and I put my grade so that the students would see it up front. This is what they use, in my opinion, most frequently. So I put it up front so that they could see that. And then I started into my required coursework and put the 8 weeks or 10 weeks or 15 weeks or 16 weeks or however you want to divide up your course. And you can see that the bolded things would have been what I referred to as subheaders. The lines were the dividers, and the links were all the content. So we showed you how to delete those, rename those, and add those and move them around. And that's really the essence of formatting your left navigation panel. So I guess a question is, everybody feel confident that you can customize it however you want at this point? I think, again, as I mentioned before, from a systems perspective, designing what you want your course to do up front and mapping out what you want your left navigation panel to look like is really important. And then one other thing that I typically do is I'll take, like I did here, I'll do a cut and paste, and then I'll put what my navigation panel looks like for that course, and I'll save it in a Word document, the image. So, and then the next time I go to manipulate, when I do a copy over, the next time I teach that course, I can just bring up that Word document and I know what it should look like, because it gets mixed in with the template, and I know, you know, in terms of what gets deleted and what doesn't, and then it makes it a little bit easier to follow. So it's just a suggestion.
Susan had a question. Susan Malcolm had a question. Do you have a preference for posting recordings of classroom sessions versus a sanitized narrated version of the course information? I'm not quite exactly sure what you're asking there. I think I know, but Susan, can you clarify?
Sure. That was when you were talking about what the synchronized sessions should look like. So it seems like an ill-timed question, but it was back when you were talking about how to organize things and what to post and what content to include in your navigation. And I typically included recorded sessions, or I sometimes felt that those were a bit cumbersome, and I would just re-record and create narrated versions of the course content for that week and post those. So I've done both. I've posted like Zoom recordings, or, you know, but so I just wondered if there was a preference, that's all.
No,
Thank
it's from my perspective, John, please feel free, but from my perspective, I kind of do both. You know, if there's a necessity to record a synchronous session, if I really feel what's going on in that session is going to be of value for everybody to re-listen to, or if it's something that I know certain people weren't able to make it, I'll record a session for that. But in general, I also, because most of the courses that I teach on ground, I also teach online. So I do have, I'm not sure I'd call it sanitized, but I understand what you're saying. It's more direct, it's more focused. You know, I'll just utilize the same narrated PowerPoint, or use a narrated version of the PowerPoint that I already have, or recreate. Yeah, I think that's that's a very good thing to do, because one of the things that happens within a synchronous session is the instructors have the control. It's more teacher centric. Whereas in an online asynchronous, where the students can listen to your narrated PowerPoint at their own pace and flow, that gives them more learner control. And it allows them to, move forward, move backwards, rehear. I mean, let's face it, you can't rewind me in a face-to-face class. You may try, but you can't rewind. But you can do that in a narrated presentation if you want to hear something again.
Yeah, I agree. I think though, it's really instructor dependent. You can do whichever you think is best. If your class tends to be interactive more, and there were good questions, answers to things, and you did a lot of demonstrations, like in my one course I would do particularly for programming, then it's harder to clean up, as you say, and put a lecture. If you're basically lecture, then I think it's easier to do. So there can be some value in them being able to see the full amount, but I don't think there's a preference that we have, right, from Rick, from the CIT perspective, or the RMUO Quality Assurance Matters perspective. That would be however you want. I think that just the fact that you're doing it either way or both ways or whatever, and making it available to students is good. What I did with mine is I asked them at the beginning of the first class session, okay, these are going to be synchronous sessions. What do you think about recording? Do you think they'll be valuable? And then at the end of the first class, I said, okay, now that you've seen the first class, do you want these recordings? And if anybody said yes and nobody objected, then I made them available each week. So again, lots of different ways to approach this. I think we, like Rick said many, many times over, I think we want to try to make this as flexible as possible for you to use. These are tools. These aren't prescriptions. And so we just want to show you a lot of different ways we think it can be done, but there's probably a lot of other creative ways that you can use Blackboard and come up with that we haven't thought of either. So yeah. Rick, do you have anything else to add there before I continue?
No, I think that this is all good. And one of the things that I think John and I and Shannon, Alicia, and Nicole believe is that good teaching is good teaching. And what you do in a face-to-face setting, if it works and it's good teaching, there's a way to transition that over and maintain that same level of personalization, if you would, in the way that you teach. And I think that's where we're looking to go with that and what we're looking to do. Go ahead, John.
Okay, thanks. All right, so just to summarize, if you look at the slide here, I think what we're trying to say here is first, map out or design a customized left navigation panel, grouping and sequencing and linking whatever content you need. Those examples that I went through, those 5 examples I went through, we can make those accessible to you if you like on Blackboard, along with the recording of this session, so that you can kind of look at those tables and see, maybe pick up some ideas. And it would make it easier for you to map out what you want to do, but just by deleting out mine on the right-hand side and putting your own in there, because the left-hand side's the default, right? Secondly, organize the links into meaningful groups. You saw how subheader they're called in Blackboard. You could decide what subheaders you want, and then what links under each subheader you want to have, and decide where you want your dividers. And then organize the left-hand panel using that content area. The content area, again, is where you just click and you get the options for the subheader, the divider, the content. And then there's other types of links too. We're not going to go into all of those options because it would be overly extensive, and I think it's not what most people use. They use it occasionally when they need to. That would be a more advanced. So based on only 6 sessions for only an hour and a half to 2 hours each, we want to make sure that we're showing you those things that'll get you through. And then you can play around, experiment, contact one of the instructional designers if you want more information on any of the other features in Blackboard, or look it up in Google or Blackboard Help or whatever. The last thing would be use that build content and build folder options within each link, which, by the way, is sorry, I've got 2 screens going on here, which shows you here what and how you could do it. So what this does is show you that this is the plus sign that brings down the the ability to choose the content area, the subheader, or the divider. The ones I was talking about that are less frequently used are from module page here through course link. And these, like I said, you could find out a little bit more about. So starting here, using this, you end up with a result that looks like this. So I think, Rick, you already addressed this, but I remember we had planned in here that you might want to talk about a potential revision to the template and your undertaking there with the CIT.
Yeah, I think there's a number of things as far as the template goes that Shannon, Alicia, Nicole, and I have been talking about, not extensively yet, but I think we will. We're looking to move things slowly into change. We're not looking to just jump in and change. I think there's some folks that are newer to the asynchronous design that may benefit from, at least initially, a template approach to what's going on and just make things a little easier for them. And you start to move into teaching this way, but it's also a way for you to learn. But by the same token, if there are things that you want to do in your course shell, things that you would like to change or things that you would like to do, you're certainly welcome to do that. And we can assist and show you how to do some of those things. As far as the template goes, I think there's some things that we're looking to put in, maybe some levels of tutorials. We're looking to increase some of the library offerings or what are going to be there and kind of update a few things that we're looking to do. But this will be something that will slowly but surely transition over. I don't know that we're going to drastically change the template that the default settings on any course shell at this point, other than to say, if you want to use that, you are welcome to. If you want to modify that, you're welcome to do that as well, as long as it fits into just the quality matters, which is really just not a template approach, but it's just good practices and good things to think about as you move any kind of a course to an asynchronous platform, for full teaching asynchronously, to augment a synchronous session, or to augment a face-to-face. There's just lots and lots of options. So those are things there. John, if you want to unshare for a second, and then I'll share. I want to show everybody something quickly.
Okay, and just to add to that, I just wanted to point out that the quality matters checklist that Rick just alluded to, just came to my mind, is in the contract as an appendix. So please read through those when you're building a course or when you're modifying a course, to just make sure that when you do customize, like Rick said, that you should be customizing with those qualities and standards in mind.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I say good teaching is good teaching. That's the full point of this. Quickly, just a couple of things to kind of share with you and show you. Several have been asking through emails while we were doing this about the CIT Blackboard shell. Some of you may or may not be aware of it. And one of the things that since I'm sharing, what John is talking about as far as aligning, you can do the drag and move like he showed you. That's a very simple. In fact, that's what I generally use. But up here at the top, where you have content area module, you do the plus sign. If you go across to the other, you see the up-down arrows. If you click on that, what comes up is an order menu where you can change and move certain things. You can click on something and then highlight it and move it up as you want. In other words, just use the arrows here. That's the other option that you have. Personally, I think that's a little more cumbersome. I like this because then I can see what I want to do and see what happens and where I want to shove things. I really like the click and drop, but you can certainly do that if that is something that is more comfortable for you. One of the things that Shannon alluded to was in Blackboard, there's lots of neat little tools and neat little ways to do things that are fairly subtle, but it's like everything else in computer days. What you're looking at is the CIT teaching organization page. It's a page that was actually put in place very early on within this COVID lockdown response. We started realizing that between John, myself, and several other people, we had a plethora of information that needed to be shared with everybody. So we started this Blackboard shell. You are all rostered and registered in this as faculty, full-time and part-time. If you are a part-time faculty that have come in and out and you're not seeing this, email this to me. I will add you to this shell. If you look, we have, I would probably say, John, within the last 3-4 months, we have filled this shell. I mean, there is just a plethora of information. We have starting with some announcements. We just put up an announcement basically there, and it links to some interesting things. But we have also featured resources, and that's just a listing. We put up new external resources. We put up summer teaching online. We put up the Ed Psych and Learning that Larry did here of recent during the month of May, I believe. Under teaching resources, we have teaching online. For those of you just getting started, there is a whole plethora of information here. Number of folders, a number of lessons. Some of these are lessons that John has taught. Some of these are lessons that I have taught in the online teaching certificate that we developed in education. This may be of interest to you. This Blackboard 101, Getting Started with the Basics, is just it's a video. It's probably about a half an hour long or so that goes through some very basic things that John is talking about. There's tips for teaching. There's a number of resources here. Over on the left-hand side, testing exams online, how you do that. Creating meetings, that's an area we will be opening up. Mike Quigley has been working with an area of CRP, crisis and anti-racism. He actually did a panel the other day. Unfortunately, we were not able to record that, but the information that is there is of great value, and some things, you know, as we kind of enter and kind of deal with a lot that's going on in the country right now, we know our students are going to have some questions and answers. There's a number of articles, there's a number of things, and Mike is adding to that as we go. There's a lot of other things, library information. Jackie Clenson has updated some things. So what I'm saying is there is just a plethora of information here. If you are looking for something, it is probably here in this Blackboard shell. If you're not finding it, email me. I'll tell you where it is. What we have done and what John has done is recently gone back in and tried to organize and reorganize, and I'm doing the same thing because we just had a whole bunch of information that flooded in. And we're trying to share that in a way that it allows it to be seen by everybody. What I would also tell you is this: if you have something that you would like to post up, in other words, if you have an article or you have a piece of information or something that you know that is of great value, please share that with us. We will absolutely post this up on the Blackboard shell and figure out a good place to highlight that. So what I would like to do quickly in closing up, because we're a couple of minutes over, I would just like to ask you, one, was this of value? I hope that it was.
Rick, excuse me, I'm sorry. Can you stop presenting? Sure. And then I have a slide that I want to bring up that you can work from.
Sure.
So actually, Rick, I have two to conclusion slides. So if I could do this one first and just give an overview of the next session, and then you can do the concluding stuff. Okay, so I just wanted to give you an overview of what we're going to be doing on Wednesday. We tried to put these in sequence as you would go through the process. So obviously setting up your Blackboard shell is what we talked about today, which is the left navigation panel, structuring it. And the next time we're going to go into, okay, if you click on any one of those content links and you have the option of building items or folders and putting things into folders, how does that work? That's obviously, in my opinion, the next logical step for how you start putting your content in. So one of the things we're going to do is talk about edit mode, student preview, lock, and build content, and assessment items. Those are the main things from the Blackboard shell, either before you go into any one of the links in the left navigation panel or when you do click into it. So those are some of the issues that we'll be talking about. Second, some best practices to consider as you start your course, things like emailing information in advance, opening up your Blackboard shell with just one content link a week in advance, and then building the rest as you go. Doesn't mean you have to have the whole shell done before you open your Blackboard shell. Welcome message or creating a welcome video, particularly important in online courses when you plan on most of it being asynchronous. Syllabus availability, how you make it available, how you maybe even take a voiceover PowerPoint and dissect your syllabus and talk them through it, which we will have some examples of. How you can separately provide textbook information to students, creating folders with lessons and assignments and other instructional items that are contained within those folders on the links. And then how to open Blackboard and customize the Start Here link, and using Blackboard announcements and send email function. So those are the items in the next hour and a half session that we are planning on for Wednesday. Okay, so Rick, I'll turn it over to you and I'll stop presenting.
Well, very good. Thank you, John. Comments or questions, number one, that anybody might have. And number two, in fact, you can kind of merge these together. Are there areas and topics that you would like to hear about, things that you would like to do that we don't have planned for the next coming 5 sessions, or something that you would like to see specifically that the CIT would address within the confines of any of these trainings for online teaching, synchronous teaching, asynchronous teaching, or face-to-face for that matter, or any type of blended hybrid approach? We're open to those things and willing to hear what you have to offer or what you're looking for. Well, I'll take the level of silence to simply mean that we have completely and totally answered everything that you were looking for and that you have no questions at this point. If you do, and as you do, please drop me an email to those. If there's a suggestion that you have or something that you would like to hear more about, we are more than open to providing that and putting something together or tapping the resources that exist within the university. One of the things that I think has allowed the CIT to work is we are tapping the existing resources that exist in this university. There is a plethora of knowledge and skill. And as John alluded, we kind of tried to make it as a theme here. You know, there's a lot of people doing a lot of very good teaching and doing good things. And if there are things that you are doing in any of your courses, synchronous, face-to-face, or asynchronous, and that you think is of value that you would like to share with the faculty, we are open to hearing that, and we will put together a session if you're willing to offer one and show those kind of examples, because I think there's just a lot of good things going on in the university, and we want to capture and share those. So if there are no other comments or questions, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. And I thank you all for your time, and those of you that will make it on Wednesday, we'll see you then. Have a good day, all.
We hope to see you all back on Wednesday.
Thanks.